Imagine yourself standing by a river with the water so clear that you can see your reflection. The fish are happily swimming and you're surrounded by green trees. Now, imagine yourself standing by the same river, but this time the water is choked with plastic. You can barely see anything and the fish are struggling to survive. Well, this is not just a hypothesis, but the unfortunate reality of the environment that we live in. Hello and welcome to Drishti IS. My name is Saloni Nankyolier and I welcome you to this special session of environment. Now take a look at the powerful message that's shared on screen. Take care of the environment the same way as you take care of your life. So we take care of our life the most, right? So why do we need to take care of our environment in the same manner? Because if the environment ceases to exist, we will also cease to exist. This is how important the environment is. So what are we going to cover in today's session? We will talk about the World Environment Day 2025, some key facts about the World Environment Day, environmental laws in India, international environmental conventions, and some previous year questions. So what is the World Environment Day? World Environment Day is a very important day which is celebrated annually to recognize the efforts needed to conserve the environment. So it is celebrated every year on June 5th, and every year we have a theme. So this year's theme is putting an end to plastic pollution. Plastic pollution is one of the most common and most evident forms of pollution. So this year's theme is also in accordance with the hashtag Beat Plastic Pollution campaign started by United Nations Environment Program. And how did all this start? So it all started in 1972 when the world leaders, they met at Stockholm for a conference. So the first day of the conference was recognized as the World Environment Day. So the United Nations Assembly started recognizing that day as the Environment Day since 1972. Every year we have a theme. This year's theme is putting an end to plastic pollution. And every year we also have a host country. So this year's host country is Republic of Korea. So has India ever hosted the World Environment Day? Yes. And we hosted it in 2018. So it was the 45th celebration of World Environment Day, and the theme again was Beat Plastic Pollution. Plastic pollution is one of the worst forms of pollution. That is why time and again you will keep seeing themes on plastic pollution for our important environment days. So how did laws started coming in India on environment? So again, it all started after the Stockholm Conference of 1972 when the leaders returned. Then the first act that was enacted was the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So it provides a legal framework for the protection of various species of wild animals and plants, and it also lists different schedules for plants and animals to let us know what is the amount of conservation efforts that would be needed to save them from extinction. And there were some important bodies that were constituted under this act, like the National Board for Wildlife, Central Zoo Authority, National Tiger Conservation Authority, and Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. These are some very important bodies. In fact, the National Tiger Conservation Authority is the same authority that is responsible for the implementation of Project Tiger in India. So after Wildlife Protection Act came in the Environment Protection Act of 1986. So Environment Protection Act is more like an umbrella act which converges all forms of environment protection laws in India, and it also works in accordance with the Stockholm Conference of 1972, and this empowered the central government. It empowered the central government to establish authorities with the mandate of preventing environmental pollution in all forms and to tackle specific environmental problems that are peculiar to different parts of the country. So who was given the authority under Environment Protection Act? It was the central government. So after Environment Protection Act came in a very important act of National Forest Policy 1988. So this was the first time we recognized the importance of our forests, that we have inherited forests from, it's a natural heritage and we have inherited it from our past generations. So it's a very important resource that we have, and it was mandated to at least save 33% or acquire at least 33% of our geographical area as forest or tree cover. So the goal was to achieve 33% of the geographical area as forest and tree cover, and it also focused on participatory management. What is participatory management? These are forests, these have been here for generations, which means there must be people residing on them. So these people should also be a part of the decision making of the conservation efforts of these forests, like a community-led development. So participatory management was also ensured or incorporated in this policy. And after this, the important one was ozone depleting substances. Regulation and Control Rules 2000. So what are ozone depleting substances or ODS? These are the substances that deplete the ozone layer. The ozone layer is the layer that saves us from harmful UV radiations of the sun. And when there's a hole in the ozone, more and more UV radiations can enter the Earth's atmosphere, and in turn it causes grave diseases like skin cancer, etc. So this ozone depleting substances, it was recognized that these substances need to be, we need to stop emitting these substances so that the ozone hole can stop widening. So this was in accordance with the Montreal Protocol of 1987. But for the first time, it was recognized that ODS is responsible for depleting the ozone layer, and we need to make conservation efforts for that. So what are some common types of ODS? The chlorofluorocarbons, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, halogens, etc. These were some recognized ODS, and we need to stop emitting these ozone depleting substances. After this came in the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Biological Diversity Act, it focused on saving the biological diversity or diversity at all three levels. So what are the three levels? Genes, species, and ecosystem. These are our three levels of biodiversity, and the Biological Diversity Act of 2002, it focused on saving biodiversity at all the three levels. So this was acted in accordance with the Convention on Biodiversity, which we will cover later in the International Convention part. So this was covered and this made use of the CBD of 1992, and it focused on the conservation of biological resources, managing the sustainable use and enabling fair and equitable sharing benefits. So we recognize that our biology or the biodiversity is a shared resource and a shared responsibility also. So we can make use of the resource, but we also need to be mindful in our consumption. So it constructed three important bodies because it focused on a three-tier structure. There should be three bodies, one at national level, one at the state level, and one at the local level. So the national level body is National Biodiversity Authority. State level, you have state biodiversity boards, and the biodiversity management committees are at the local level. So this happened for proper governance. We decentralized our efforts for conservation of biodiversity, and for proper governance, we had a three-tier structure. Now, after the Biological Diversity Act came in the Forest Rights Act of 2006. Recall the National Forest Policy of 1988. There are forests, there are people living in this forest for generations. So these people depend on the forest for their livelihood. They collect those resources. So these people also have some rights on the forest, some generational rights on the forest. So their rights were protected under the Forest Right Act of 2006. And who was made the authority? The Gram Sabha, which is at the local level. The Gram Sabha was made the authority to initiate the process to determine what would be the individual forest rights and community forest rights for FDSTs and OTFTs, which is forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other tribal forest dwellers. So these people have been living in the forest for generations. These are the scheduled tribes living in those forest areas, and these are people other than the scheduled tribes, but they have been living on those forests for at least 3 generations or 75 years. So what would be the extent of their individual forest right or community forest right will be decided by the Gram Sabha under the Forest Rights Act. And this expands the mandate of the 5th and 6th schedule of the Constitution. So what do these schedules say? They talk about tribal welfare. Tribal welfare of northeastern states, specifically in 6th schedule. How many northeastern states? 4 northeastern states are covered right now. Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. And they are covered in the 6th schedule. And 5th schedule covers all the states other than the northeastern states which have a large tribal population. So this expands the mandate of these two schedules so that we can provide more and more benefits for tribal welfare. After this act came in the Wetland Conservation and Management Rules 2010-2017. So came in 2010, amended in 2017 for wetland conservation. Now what are wetlands? Wetlands are like a bridge between terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem is all land and aquatic ecosystem is all water. So wetland is somewhere in between. It is between land and water. The primary component is water, but it is like a transition between a terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. So it is very unique and very specific in its requirements. So the conservation also needs to be unique. And that is the reason we came in with wetland conservation and management rules. So in 2010, we provided for a central wetland regulatory authority, that we created a body at the central level which would be responsible for taking care of the wetlands throughout the country. But in 2017, we decentralized it and we created state level bodies and the National Wetland Committee for oversight and advisory purposes. So this time we decentralized and we created state level bodies, and the national level body would exist, but it will only be in an advisory role. So wetlands, the newer generation regulations also remove some items from the definition of wetlands, including backwaters, lagoons, creeks, and estuaries. And now, in 2017, the process to identify wetlands has been delegated to the states. So it is up to the states to decide which which parts would be considered as wetlands and which will not. So that was all for the domestic laws in India. Now let's focus on the international environmental conventions and protocols. The first important one is the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. So we just discussed wetlands. Now, internationally, how was this recognized? This was recognized in 1971 at Ramsar, which is in Iran. So the world leaders came together, they signed an agreement that the wetlands are a unique ecosystem and they need unique efforts. So then came in the Ramsar Convention. India's status is that we have implemented it in 1982, meaning we have already started making laws in 1982. And some Ramsar sites in India are, there are 89 Ramsar sites right now in India as of 2025. Some important ones are like Loktak, Koila Dio National Park, Chilka Lake, Sundarbans Delta. These are all Ramsar sites that we have in India. And the World Wetland Day is observed on February 2nd. So other than the Ramsar sites, there is also an important record, more like a register, which is known as the Montreux record. Now, this is not a great place to be for the wetlands. Why? Because this record or this register maintains the log of those wetlands which are being threatened by the human activities and they need special conservation. They need more conservation. So it contains the list of all those threatened wetlands. And once we have made sufficient conservation efforts and that wetland is now out of danger, it finally moves out of the Montreux record. So this is what was covered in the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. Then came in the Convention on Migratory Species. What are migratory species? Species that migrate. So why do species migrate? Migration means moving from one place to another. Why do they do that? Because of multiple reasons. Maybe due to harsh weather conditions or breeding or any other purpose or food purposes. So there could be multiple reasons for these species to be changing their habitat time and again. And these species are known as migratory species. For example, Siberian crane. So these species also require special conservation efforts, and this was made sure under the Convention on Migratory Species, which is also known as Bonn Convention. Bonn is a place in Germany. So it focuses on addressing the protection of wild-caught migratory species, came into force in 1983. Membership is 133 and it has two appendices, Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. Appendix 1 gives the highest amount of protection to the most endangered species, most endangered migratory species. And Appendix 2 lists those species which are right now not critically endangered or critically threatened, but we need to keep making efforts for their conservation so that they do not fall into the first category. So this is what came in for migratory species. Then we have the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification or UNCCD. So what is desertification? Desertification is a process by which a land which was once fertile has now changed into a barren land or a desert. So this is known as desertification, and there could be multiple reasons for that also, like prolonged drought conditions, there was bad monsoon, or there was bad irrigation or agriculture on the land, a lot of shifting agriculture happened. So there could be multiple reasons for desertification also. And the Convention to Combat Desertification came in 1994. And an important thing in this is that this is the only legally binding international treaty which addresses causes and effects of desertification and drought. Only legally binding, meaning the countries which have signed and ratified it are now legally mandated to implement the laws for the conservation of these deserted areas. So India's so the recent one happened, the recent Conference of Parties 15. It took place in Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa. India also participated. India's environment minister participated. The membership is 197 countries, 196 countries plus European Union. And again, we discussed the mandate. It is to reduce land degradation and land degradation effects and protect the land from becoming a desert. Then came in one of the most important and UPSC's favorite convention, which is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. Time and again, you will keep seeing this questions on this either in prelims or in mains, because this was the first time when everybody in the world, when the nations in the world, they recognized global climate change. Climate change as a term was introduced, and everybody recognized that yes, our climate is changing and it is changing for worse. So this convention, it came in 1992 in the Earth Summit of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Headquarters are in Bonn, Germany. Came into force on March 21, 1994. What is the goal? The goal is to stabilize greenhouse gases. So we recognize that global climate change is happening. Climate change is happening, which means that the temperature is rising. The global temperature is rising. And why is it rising? Because greenhouse gases emission is increasing. So greenhouse gases are those gases which cause the greenhouse effect, and the emission of these gases is increasing. That is the reason the global climate is also increasing. The temperature is increasing. So what goal was mentioned here? It was to stabilize the atmospheric greenhouse gases or GHG levels to prevent harmful human impact on climate. And this UNFCCC formed the basis for the Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol of 1997. So you recall the Kyoto Protocol here, we talked about legally binding emission targets for developed countries, only for Annex 1 or developed countries. Why only the developed countries? Because these are the countries that took the maximum benefit of industrialization. These were the countries that emitted the maximum amount of GHGs decades ago, and the developing countries or the least developed nations are now you're now serving us, suffering from the harmful effects of it. So Kyoto Protocol mentioned some legally binding emission targets for developed countries, and this was in accordance with the UNFCCC. Now, how will you reduce the greenhouse gas emissions? There needs to be proper technology in place, and a technology transfer also needs to happen. So who does that? The Climate Tech Center Network is the UNFCCC's operational body for promoting technology transfer for low carbon, climate resilient development governed by the COP. So which is the body that does that? It's the Climate Tech Center Network. After UNFCCC came in the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity. Recall this. This formed our base for the Biodiversity Act of 2002. So what India enacted in 2002 was in accordance with the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity of 1992 that took place in the Earth Summit. So it entered into force in 1993. The Secretariat is in Montreal, Canada. USA has signed but not ratified. Now, what do you mean by ratification? Ratification is a process by which the country's government provides a formal consent to that agreement, and then it becomes legally binding on the country. So when these leaders, they sign those agreements, they come back to their countries, they discuss it within their internal parliament, and when the parliament ratifies it or provides its consent to it, it becomes legally binding for those countries, which means they now need to start implementing laws for that conservation. So what has India done? India's action was the Biodiversity Act, which was passed in 2002, and this was the first global treaty recognizing shared responsibility for biodiversity conservation. As I mentioned, we recognize that biodiversity is a shared resource, but at the same time, it is also a shared responsibility, and this was the first step in that direction. Then came in the United Nations Environment Programme, or UNEP. Now, this UNEP is a very important body. It's more like an environment coach, which provides advices or to the nations on how to, stop the harmful impacts of global climate change, or to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, to be carbon friendly. So this is what UNEP does in general. It was co-founded by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and WMO. So I think this was also a question that was asked in one of the previous years in prelims, that as a statement that UNEP was co-founded by IPCC and WMO. The key role in developing is multilateral environmental agreements globally, and it hosts secretariats for 9 major MEAs. It's a very important body. It hosts secretariats for 9 major MEAs like the Convention on Biodiversity Act, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species or CITES, Convention on Migratory Species, and Convention for Ozone Layer Protection. So this hosts 9 important secretariats, and if you recall, there's a Global Environment Facility which deals with providing funding to most of the environment programs. So that Global Environment Facility is also included in UNEP. That is how important UNEP is for the environment action. So that was all for today's video. Let's quickly look at a question that was already asked in prelims 2019 and try answering this question in the comment section. Consider the following statements. Under Ramsar Convention, it is mandatory on the part of the Government of India to protect and conserve all the wetlands in the territory of India. 2. The Wetlands Conservation and Management Rules 2000 were framed by the Government of India based on the recommendations of the Ramsar Convention. 3. The Wetlands Conservation and Management Rules 2010 also encompass the drainage area or catchment regions of the wetlands as determined by the authority. Which of the following which of these statements given above are correct? 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. So that was all for today's video. Try attempting the question in the comment section. Thank you for watching the video. Until we meet the next time, please keep studying and keep revising.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.